Greetings. My name is Michael McGreal, and I'm a Director of Client Services with Sedlak Supply Chain Consultants. Sedlak is a supply chain consulting firm dedicated to servicing our clients in the areas of distribution network planning, facility design, material handling equipment, distribution operations, and the information systems required to support them. I'm greatly honored to serve as your moderator for this webinar entitled Eliminating Bottlenecks in Fulfillment, Tools, Techs, and Tactics for Fast and Reliable Operations, and would like to offer you a warm welcome today. This webinar is going to offer you a deep dive and expert insight into the smarter processes and flexible workflows that leading brands are using to eliminate friction and consistently deliver faster, more reliable order fulfillment. In this webinar, experts from Tompkins Robotics and Vargo will break down the tools, technology, and tactics that keep inventory moving smoothly through every stage of fulfillment. Whether you're just beginning your automation journey or pursuing the next phase of implementation, this session will equip you with actionable strategies to build a high-velocity, continuous operation. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to our speakers. Ryan Nosler is Senior Strategic Account Executive at Vargo, and Bruce Baring is VP Solutions and Partners at Tompkins Robotics. Ryan, can you please introduce yourself and your company?
Thanks, Michael. Hi, I'm Ryan Nosler, Senior Strategic Account Executive, and I work for Vargo. Vargo has been providing turnkey solutions since 1971, powered by our warehouse execution software, COFI, which stands for Continuous Order Fulfillment Engine. I'm excited to be here. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm Bruce Baring. I'm Vice President of Solutions and Partners here at Tompkins Robotics. We happen to be in our lab here in Orlando, Florida. This is a demonstration facility where we have all of our technologies in place, and we're fortunate enough to be able to film that from here today. Tompkins Robotics was founded in 2017. We are an AMR-based robotic sortation company, and we have several different products, with T-Sort being our primary sortation product line.
Thank you, Bruce. The format today is solely a question and answer approach. That is, I'll be asking questions for Ryan and Bruce, and we'll be addressing those questions without any presentation materials. Please also know that we are looking for you, our knowledgeable audience, to post your own questions into the chat window, and we will have a separate Q&A session at the conclusion of the webinar. Now, let us begin. Ryan or Bruce, the overview for this webinar talks about eliminating bottlenecks and overcoming friction in distribution operations. How do you define bottlenecks or friction in a warehouse setting?
Well, what we're really focused on today, Michael, is anything that increases cycle time in the fulfillment process, anything that increases the labor content required to get product out the door, or anything that may contribute to poor service levels for your customers.
Yep, totally agree. And it's fun to see these guys moving continuously behind us here. But yes, that's what we're trying to avoid, right? With any type of operation. When orders stop moving through the building for whatever reason, that's friction, and that's what we're trying to get away from.
Okay. What would you say is the biggest, most often overlooked cause of this friction?
Ooh, overlooked one. You know, that's a good one. I think overlooked is probably starts at planning. I think as operations are designed and implemented, you have an idea on what a peak day looks like, on what an average day looks like, and you size the system, and I know you guys do this well over at Sedlak. You size the system to handle those volumes and plan for that growth. But at the beginning of the day, or beginning of the shift, when you're planning for what work is going to be processed, the interruptions that can take place throughout the day that stop production, whether that be somebody taking a break, or whether that be a jam, or whether that be a tail of a wave and somebody's trying to find that last unit to complete an order, those are the things that you're not really counting on and not prepared for. And I feel like that's one thing that's overlooked on a day-to-day basis.
And in addition to the planning process, I think there's also unsynchronized activities. So there's a normal flow throughout distribution operations, and as those sequential processes get out of sync, it creates these areas of opportunity. In addition to that, it's like what I like to call invisible leaks. So you look through a process and you start losing seconds here, minutes there, and by the end of the day, after that happens hundreds of times, it adds up to big loss.
Oh, that's perfect. And I'm, really glad to hear you talk about the data up front, because that's what we see as always being a key element in the design to help prevent, bottlenecks and constraints. So as a fulfillment operations, as they face faster delivery expectations and growing SKU complexity, what new sources of frictions or constraints are starting to emerge?
So I'll start with that, and I think you talked about faster delivery and SKU complexities. The faster delivery really is push a lot of people towards more regional micro fulfillment centers. So they're smaller in scale and scope, which means you lose that opportunity of scale through different processes and technologies. And in addition to that, it makes the planning that Ryan talked about earlier even more difficult when you have different locations that you have to plan the inventory and try to balance the multiple sites throughout that regional network.
Yeah, I think you nailed it, Bruce. I mean, and you add SKUs just by sheer math. You add complexity and challenging to picking, and then of course chasing faster cutoffs. If you're dripping in priority orders and trying to get those over to packing, consolidation, and shipping on time and in sequence, it stresses operations, and certainly those are new challenges that we face as the demand for e-com and demand for same-day ship continues to grow and grow in our country and in the world.
Okay, I see. So where do operations most often over-optimize one area, like maybe pick speed, while unintentionally creating constraints downstream?
Yeah, I think Bruce hit on this earlier when he was talking about imbalances, and it's important as you look at the system holistically to understand how things upstream are going to be balanced with things downstream, and how waiting for a line to end up in a put wall, for instance, could impact a series of totes or orders that are coming in and ready to turn, but we're still waiting for this last one. It's an area where if you're picking at a speed up here, you need to make sure that you're ready and balanced downstream, and those are working together in harmony. And any feedback that you can get from downstream on how that's behaving, you need to be able to throttle upstream or push it if you're choking them out. So,
I think the key to identifying those opportunities is the types of metrics that you're focused on. If your metrics are focused on siloed operations, then you're going to have some sub-optimization between those different processes. So if you build your metrics so that you're looking at the overall cost of the operation, overall cost of fulfillment, then that helps you optimize the entire flow throughout the facility.
I see. And I think a lot of that downstream processing and over-optimizing maybe one area is quite a challenge, where there's a lot of system support that can be leveraged to also minimize that. And one area that might not be so readily evident in terms of warehouse space utilization. How does warehouse space utilization actually impact productivity and such?
yeah, I think as you look at how items are picked in a warehouse and how expensive floor space is, the size of the system, the density of the system is a big factor in how efficient that works. If you have a pick module, for instance, and it's very long, and your pickers have to make long runs to get across their zones. Obviously, that challenges them to be efficient with your picking, and there's technology out there that utilizes the cube much more efficiently, whether it's robots or whether it's more dense picking, and getting that pick out of a smaller and denser area certainly helps contribute to a higher optimal flow.
And is that really just in the picking space, or is that applicable to storage space as well, and so forth?
I think it's applicable to both. Once you start reaching that storage capacity, whether that's a pick location or a storage location, you start losing some of your ability to slot product for the most efficient movement throughout. So if you've only got a handful of positions location, that's where that inventory is going to go. If you have more available locations, then you can locate that inventory in a better location for its picking productivity or storage productivity.
I see. And what tools and operational tactics have the biggest impact on reducing friction, and how should operators think about integrating them?
This is a fun one.
Well, I think the first step is looking at your processes and identifying opportunities to change processes to optimize your operational performance. Once you get the processes right, you can start looking at automation. And then once you have those two things in place, you can start looking at more tactical things like slotting. All three of those opportunities are really driven by data, and using that data to identify the opportunities in your operation, and by observing the operational flows to identify ways to do things better.
Yeah, I promised myself I wouldn't do a Vargo commercial on this question, but I'm getting all warm and fuzzy thinking about it. Warehouse execution software is very critical in response to this question, and particularly operational flow. There's a lot of tools out there. We're sitting in front of some great ones, and there's certainly more. The right tool is, as you guys know over at SEDLAC, you can use data and you can use the operation and use your expertise to drive to tools that make sense. But it's critical to have warehouse execution software that understands the balance of the system and can react in real time to the ebbs and flows of fulfillment through the day. So for me, that's something that Vargo and Kofi does very well, and certainly something that we want to continue to do.
Yeah, we certainly see the warehouse execution system as a huge benefit for having those kinds of tools in your tool belt. So how about reverse logistics and constraints or bottlenecks, and how does reverse logistics friction impact warehouse flow?
Yeah, reverse logistics is a very hot topic these days, and figuring out paths to reduce friction, reduce bottlenecks inbound. It's a fun topic now, even as folks start using AI to make the QM or QA process go a bit faster, taking pictures and having it analyze it and making sure it can get back to stock quickly. That part is speeding up, and then as well as just getting it inbound, getting it through the return check process, and getting it back onto a shelf so that it's allocatable and pickable is the next challenge. And there's companies that are very good at doing that, and there's companies that struggle. We're just kind of scratching the surface on the automation that can help do that, and we're sitting in front of some now.
Yeah, I was just going to say, returns typically become that pile in the corner, and you don't address it until it gets too big. But the pile in the corner can't produce any revenue until you get it sorted out and allocated properly. So looking at ways to simplify the returns process through automation or other techniques to get that product back into inventory sooner is much better.
Okay, thank you. So, jumping back into normal operations, once you identify where the constraints and bottlenecks are in the system, how can data and KPIs be used to continuously optimize operations and prepare for peak demands?
Well, through tracking of KPIs, you can identify once something gets, kind of out of process. Then you can review what is causing that out of process condition, do some assessments and try to identify what's changing that KPI. Then you look at what you need to change and what kind of improvements you need to make, and then you go back to the KPIs and you measure the change to see if it was successful.
Yeah, I think you hit it, Bruce. The data drives the decision on how the operation flows and what technology or processes you implement. And then as that system is implemented, you look at the KPIs and bounce them off of what you would expect as an industry standard. And if it's in line, great, things are working. If something's lagging behind, then you know where you need to investigate. But yeah, it's a good indication on how your system's performing and how things are moving through the building.
All right, perfect. Another great example of where WES and WMS can be good systems tools to monitor that. So what role do the employees and the workers on the floor have to play in reducing bottlenecks?
Yeah, this is a great question, and I talk about this a lot during project execution, and certainly as we go live and enter into our hypercare support period. You can have the greatest system in the world, perfectly engineered and executed well, but if the folks on the floor haven't bought in and you haven't brought them along with you, the system is going to struggle to achieve the business objectives that you've set out to achieve. And I think making sure that they feel that they're a part of the team, that they're trained on how the new process works. It's not like something that they've done before, perhaps. And so you want to make sure that they feel that they're part of the team and they come along with it, because their performance and their attitude towards the different system or change in process is very important to the success of the overall system.
Yeah, I think Ryan hit it on the head. The only thing I would like to add there is that in addition to getting the buy-in of the employees, you should also use them as a resource to identify those opportunities. We talked about the KPI process, and once they get out of sync, looking at what you can do to improve those KPIs, and the employees are a great resource to tap into to try to identify those opportunities.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So how can traditional automation, and maybe you can expand on, really what that entails, how does that create infrastructure friction or bottlenecks during growth periods?
Well, I'm obviously biased. We have a super flexible automation solution, but traditional automation would be, I would say, your conveyors, your linear sorters, things that are bolted to the ground, things that you design for 5 years in the future, and build for that even on day one. Some of the newer technologies are much more flexible. You build as you grow. If you need to make changes and modify, they give you that ability to do that. There's no single point of failure, and so the implementation timeline is typically much less, so it just gives you a lot more flexibility compared to things that are rigid and bolted to the floor.
Yeah, I laugh because that's a fastball down the middle for both of us. We both tend to move away from traditional because it's rigid, and you build a wave, you release the wave, it goes into a pick module, they pick and they dump the order onto the conveyor, and then it gets over to the sorter, and all of these things are great in plan, but we know operationally things can impact sequence of when things arrive, and that can cause friction or bottlenecks over at order matching, consolidation. There's lots of things that can happen in a warehouse that can interrupt the consistent flow that you begin the day planning. And the things that we do are implement solutions that are more flexible, and they can say, hey, that order is here early and we're not ready for it. What can we do to move around? And you can't just do that on a conveyor, but with the automation that's behind us, you can, or with other automation out there that we implement and power with Kofi, we're able to make those real-time adjustments so that we keep the continuous flow moving through the building.
Well, that's great, and I can certainly back those sentiments up. What we've seen at SEDLAC is there's been, just a paradigm shift in the last several years from the traditional automation, being a little less costly and a little less risky, the balance is swung the other way where it's really now, tends to be more costly and less risky. So I think as we move into looking at the future and more sophisticated automation, it's opening up a lot of possibilities for a lot of distribution operations. So is it possible to completely eliminate constraints and friction in a warehouse?
Yes, of course, and you should talk to us about how to do that. No, I don't think so, and I think as we talk about moving away from traditional tools, it's that flexibility that allows you to accommodate friction. An exception is going to happen. A barcode's not going to get read. Something is going to happen that is going to cause a bottleneck, cause friction. And the system's ability, whether it's the software or whether it's the automation, to react to those situations and have outlets to move and adjust. We want to keep the flow like this so that we can keep it moving in and accommodate for that friction, as opposed to everything grinding to a halt until somebody gets over and fixes the situation, and then we can resume again. And that's what the flexibility of our solutions can do for you.
Yeah, you're always going to have the friction. The friction's always going to change. So the key is developing the processes to identify and eliminate that friction and realize that it's going to be an ongoing process.
Okay, so when we move into some of these new technologies, what are some of the common mistakes operators make when rolling out new tools or processes that actually add friction or move it to another part of the operation instead of just removing it?
Well, I think it's easy to go jump on the shiny new technology. But before you get to that point, you need to simplify your operation and simplify your processes. Make sure that they're right. You need to focus on the optimization of the entire process from beginning to end and not sub-optimization. And then you need to realize, we hit it a little bit on the last one, but if anybody's read The Goal, Herbie always moves. So as you implement these new tools and processes, realize the fact that you're going to have a new bottleneck and you're going to have to address that, and then it's going to move to another point in your operation.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think, I hope there's lots of operators watching this. We love you, operators. Thank you so much for your support. I think it's on us as an integrator or a solution provider to make sure, again, like we said earlier, bring them along, have a good change management program and philosophy, have good job aids, have good training, so that we can make sure that when they get into their environment with this new solution, that they're ready and feel confident about the choices and decisions that they're going to be making, and that the transaction requests and requirements are clear to them, so that they can get up to speed as quickly as possible.
Okay. Well, I see we had some questions in the chat, so let me take a look at some of these. One, how important is interoperability between WMS, WES, and automation hardware when trying to remove the constraints?
Sure sounds like a Vargo question.
I mean, wow, thanks. Yeah, it's absolutely critical, and we talk about this a lot, and why the need for a WES is so important as we dig into really the line level controls of automation. Our goal is to make sure that in real time we have an understanding of all available resources in a warehouse, and that could be a picker in an aisle in a pick module, that could be a robot sorting to an order, that can be a robot going to pick an order. All the technology that we implement in our solutions, we want to understand what that current status is, and as we're looking at that, looking at your SLAs and business requirements that we need to meet, and looking at the upstream demand and making that decision. What is the next best task for us to pull in so that we can execute and keep flow moving through the building at the most optimal rate? And you can't do that without a very robust and strong WES like we've got.
And I'll just say from our standpoint, we can be the best, fastest sortation solution available, but if the WMS and WS does not flow the product to us in such a way that we can get it sorted and complete the orders effectively, then we'll be sitting there waiting for the work to come and allow us to do what we need to do.
All right, so our final question of the session. How does AI help in improving warehouse operations?
I knew we weren't going to get, there's no way we were going to get through a whole thing without AI being brought up. So AI is great. As the warehouse execution software is AI, which means it's rich algorithmic content that pulls in a pending pool of orders, however big or small that may be, and uses algorithms on top of algorithms to decide what's the next best one to move through. That's the basis of what we're talking about, but there's more advancements in AI that we're looking at and implementing these days that I think are going to help a lot. Dynamic workforce allocation. So essentially, as you have work being done in a pick module, and perhaps there's more requirement for labor on one side than the other, the system moves folks over and automatically, just by recognizing the need for more folks. So it pulls that functionality out of the decision making of a supervisor that may be slow. So moving folks around to where the labor is needed is another piece of AI that's exciting for us.
And AA, from a tactical level, obviously it's going to help with routing. It's going to help with planning. It's going to help with allocation. So it's going to, as you have different labor requirements throughout your facility, AI is going to be able to help you make those adjustments in a more routine fashion, and just a lot of things to help you as an operator, give you tools to plan and manage your workforce and your operation.
Well, this brings us to the conclusion of our webinar. We'll send an email out to any unanswered questions that we could not get to today. On behalf of Ryan and Bruce, I would like to thank you for your participation.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.